All right, I think we're all set, right? Okay. So, welcome back. Um, yeah, just put that over there. Thank you. The question was, why don't we spend time or more time working with energy? Right? That was the question? Yes. Okay. Recently, I had a client come back to me after, gosh, more than 10 years. And I was surprised that it had been so long because her voice was so familiar and we had such a wonderful rapport. And I thought, my goodness, has it really been more than 10 years? And she said, yeah, the last time we spoke was this is when. And the reason I'm coming back is because, well, I went to another psychic. Her concern was that this psychic was very, very just earnest. And, she was having these problems in a romantic relationship. And this person determined that, her chakras were just all clogged up, preventing her from having the love life that she wanted. And, it was going to take a considerable amount of, quote, spiritual work to get her unstuck. And $4,800, well, that was the ticket. That would give them enough time working together to clean her energy. And something, shock, about that didn't seem right to my client, thank God. And so she came back and she just said, is that real, Jack? Do I really need to have my energy cleaned? And some of you, I can see you're, rocking back and forth and shaking your heads or trying not to smile. But I also see some of you leaning forward, wondering, hey, what's going on here, right? Um, this is not uncommon, sadly. This is the state of this business, as it were. Practitioners exist on a continuum from those who are absolutely beautiful people, genuinely living through their heart and genuinely being of service to others. And on the other side of that continuum are criminals. Back in the fall, maybe 6 or 7 months ago, I had another client come to me. And this was a reasonably accomplished person, earned a good living, single parent, but could not afford to live on her own. Instead, was sharing an apartment with her parents because every month she was paying a retainer to an energy worker to prevent her aged father from falling ill and dying because her bad energy was locked in a pattern feeding bad energy to her father, contributing to a long-term terminal illness. This is what she was told. And so she was paying a retainer every month to keep her energy pure. This is what's going on out there, folks. And since we're recording this, I want to make it very, very clear to anyone who's listening. You never, ever need to pay anyone to clean your chakras, clean your energy, remove a curse, remove someone else's energy from you, absolve you of karma, It's just these things are tropes that are used to manipulate people. It is just fundamentally a lie. Each of you, now I'm speaking to the audience at large, are blameless. Your energy cannot get stuck. It cannot be turned to a different, more appealing color. It never needs to be optimized. Recently, I had another client say, Jack, my energy, my energy, my energy. How can I raise my vibration? Do you see in that the mindset of self-blame? See, that's the problem. You are not the victim of your energy. That mindset, believing there's something deficient about me, something I can't put my finger on, it must be energy. How do I fix that? That is a mindset there of self-blame. But in there too is a kind of powerlessness. Where did we learn to be so powerless? Where did we learn to assume that there's something metaphysical about me that's so fraudulent or so dirty or so broken or so low vibration that I become in some ways unacceptable to the world? See, this is where we need to go. Because this whole talk about energy is really dealing with metaphors. And that includes the business of chakra. And I know there are many, many great books written about Kundalini and energy and prana and chakras and, tying it in with the endocrine system and all kinds of things. But you're forgetting if you're not your body, then none of this belongs to you. Yeah, the body breathes, the mind thinks, but you're not your body. You are not your mind. Now, there may be times where using these metaphors with people who are operating from a certain perspective, these are helpful tools. But I want you to keep it in you that if you want to work with energy, you must master your nervous system. If you want to work with energy, listen to the tone and timbre of your voice. If you want to work with energy, can you hold the gaze of another kindly? But the point being is that if we want to work with energy, we must step back from the need to impose our will onto the world. We must step back from creating an identity out of the manipulation and observation of energy that is really just patterns of information that we give meaning to. Does the unthinking universe care if something is blue or yellow or orange? No. In fact, those colors really don't exist until the energy under observation is processed by the limited capacity of our sensory systems. All of these are fabrications. Your presence is all the energy anyone is ever really going to feel, and how they interpret it is beyond your control. I was in a coffee shop recently, and it was a very busy place, popular, and they were switching over from paper menus to those barcode things that people photograph on their phones and pull up a menu online. So there was a bit of chaos. People weren't really sure where to queue, and they weren't really sure, is my phone working? Do I have reception? Is this the right menu? I can't see it. And so there was this sort of group of people, individually and collectively staring at their phones, and it really created this confusion in this coffee shop. And I was standing at the counter, having already asked for a cup of tea, and I was watching this chaos as the crowd came in behind me. And then there was an individual who sort of pushed through the crowd and really was just wanting a coffee and found his way to the counter. And he was a little flustered, from all of the lack of organization, and he was trying to get a barista's attention so he could order. And the barista walked up to the counter, having, been doing something at the service table or whatever behind. And as they approached, I handed this individual my credit card, which now the man next to me thought I took the server who was the barista who was about to serve him. And so, of course, he became irate. And he started, look at this person. Who do you think you are? And, jumping the line, et cetera, et cetera. He had no idea I'd already been there standing, waiting for my tea for 10 minutes. I ignored him, collected my credit card back and signed the receipt and said good day, and then walked over to the little table where you can dump your tea bag, etc., and maybe get some sugar or something. And this man was still screaming, recruiting other people to his cause. Did you see that person? He jumped the line, etc. And I was just standing there, emptying my tea bag into a little bin, when this little old man walked up, and he was struggling to get the lid off his coffee without spilling it, and then putting some cream into it. And the whole time, he really didn't take his eyes off me. I could feel him staring at me. And finally, I just looked up and smiled, and he locked his gaze with mine. And then his face just illuminated, and he said, "You have very kind eyes." Which one of these men was correct? The one who sought out my eyes to connect. He looked for my eyes. And when he found them, he just stayed looking at me until I acknowledged him eye to eye. And he said, "You have very kind eyes." Now, of course, he had kind eyes. But all the while in the background, there's still this other guy rambling about, you know, how horrible I was for jumping the queue, etc. But which one of these is right? Each of these men were expressing the energy inside of them, using me as a blank canvas through which to relate to, create an identity for themselves, define me, and experience their inner life as if it exists outside of them. Probably quite ignorant of the fact that they're the author of their experience. Do you see where I'm going? Energy is the expression of our living being. It can't be stuck. It's never stuck. When we feel conflicted or we feel stifled, it's not because the energy is stuck. It's because we're stuck in our mind or we're stuck in our body. We're not allowing ourselves to experience the free flow of all that is expressing itself through us as us. This goes back to the notion of being in the world and not of it. All of this chit chat about self improvement and spiritual journeys and all of this, these ideas about who we should be, how our life should be, and what we wish to create, this is egotism. Once we are identified with form, the form has its own idea about who we should be, how we should show up, how others should perceive us, and how we should be living. It's buying into that falsehood where we believe we're the author of our life. That's the stuckness. It's the addiction to control, the belief that the outer world should make me feel how I want to feel through other people or others or outer circumstances mirroring back to me who I think I should be or how I should be admired or what I should achieve. And thus, that's my identity. This is who I am. Because your experience of self only emerges in relationship to other objects. That object could be a friend. So I relate to you as a friend. I experience myself as a friend. I can experience myself as a son. I can experience myself as a father. I can experience myself as a mentor or a teacher or a student. I can also dwell on my past and alter my experience of self. I can imagine a future, alter my experience of self, or I can admire my accomplishments and think this is who I am, or we can use our education, our money, our social status, our roles as husbands and wives or girlfriends and boyfriends. This is who I am because in relationship to this is how I feel. This is my identity. But as spiritual aspirants, and really that's what I want you to focus on. Extrasensory perception is something that will happen. And I want to show you how to work with it and use it to help others. I am not in the business of you select few learning how to become a psychic to make that your identity. No, I want you to become more and more human until even that becomes a burden for you. And let that go. And you will have the capacity to observe the finer things beyond conventional sensory perception. And you can use that in service to others. But it will take time. But I promise you, if you use those things to build yourself an identity, it's going to be really miserable for you long term. It's very lonely to build yourself a kind of spiritual opacity around you where you can see the world and you can see other people living it, but you're somehow not really connected to it except through your imagined authority as a psychic. That's not a way of living connected. And I need you to understand that. It may be difficult because it's very exciting, particularly in the beginning, to be exposed to the subtleties of the atmosphere of others and the atmosphere of environments. And yes, the best word we have to describe that interface is working with energy. But really, the energy is impressing itself upon the body. And the consciousness, the mind is affected. And so really you're just witnessing the happenstance of a mind identified with a body, identified with patterns of energy, right? It's really a big tangled mess. What I want you to do is turn toward the observer. Who is it that's watching all of this? Or what is it that's watching all of this? Find out who that is. Find out what that is. And then little by little, you begin to disentangle yourself from the illusion. You begin to realize that there's nothing to improve. You begin to realize that everything that you maybe hope to achieve is foolishness. But on the other hand, it's very disorienting until you can stabilize yourself in this kind of objectivity where you're in the world, yet not defined by it. And see, rather than creating an identity out of mental processes like extrasensory perception or your degree or your relationship or your financial circumstances or your imagined future or your imagined past, once it's directed inward, your attention beyond your personal self, beyond your childhood, but into that which is observing the animation of your mind and body and its being and connection in the world. When you go into that, the experience of who you are, your identity dramatically changes. And then you can be in the world and not be defined by it, not need to manipulate or work with energy because you are everything. I was in a social situation recently. A gentleman came up to me, and he's getting older. He's has some illness, and so he's very much more mindful about the things that matter. And he's newlywed to a woman who is a bit of a mystic in her own way. And so he's taken up meditation and other practices that complement his belief systems that have become a source of peace and comfort to him. And he was relating to me this story, how he was alone in the house and he was, burning some incense and candles and doing some meditation and prayer work, particularly prayer work around gratitude, cultivating gratitude. Really, what that is, it's creating safety. And so, kind of going back for a moment about raising your vibration, as it were, is really letting go of the things within the mind and in the body that create fear or fear responses. And gratitude is a wonderful tool for that because when our nervous system relaxes, the natural vitality can flow through us easily. And the feeling that's experienced by others when our nervous system is relaxed is one of safety. And then how they treat us is different, right? So we don't need to raise our vibration per se. We just need to begin by deeply accepting ourselves exactly as we are. Because, well, if we don't fully accept ourselves, how can we create safety in ourselves, right? To try to change who we are, to impose a new vibrational status is really to go at war with ourselves. So the first step is to create a sense of kindness and gratitude and self-acceptance for exactly where we are. So going back to this gentleman, he's doing this work. And it was in the morning, and after he'd finished his practice, he decided to go and make himself some breakfast. And once in the kitchen and going about the business of cooking, he began to smell his mother. And this gentleman is over 60, and his mother's been gone for some years. And nevertheless, he smelled his mother. And then he turned and he saw her standing there. And he began to describe how he couldn't see her feet. He really couldn't see below her shins. And she was backlit. And he could only see her shoulders and torso and her face. And, you know, even on her arms, really not past her elbows. And I know exactly what he was describing because I've witnessed the same thing. And then he said his mother greeted him, and there was some music playing in the house. And she said, "Remember how we used to dance? I miss dancing with you, my boy." And he began to cry. And he felt his mother embrace him, and they danced. He said he felt his mother's arms around him, and they just gently moving to the music, feeling the embrace of his long departed mother. And in the middle of that moment, that sacred moment, suddenly his phone rang, and it was his wife. And she said, "Honey, are you okay? I could feel a shift in the energy. Are you all right?" And then he said, "You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe what happened." And she said, "Yeah, my dad did the same thing. So why am I telling you this?" But he was reliving this experience with me. He was very emotional and he was really just connected to his memory. And he said, "If this had happened even 10 years ago, I would have been terrified." And I said, "That's right." I said, people crave for these kinds of experiences. They want evidence, they want proof. And they think by manipulating or working with energy, they give themselves some kind of experience, but it's really just in their mind. But when these events actually occur, they require nothing from us. They are objective phenomena. And I said, you can't chase these things. They have nothing to do with us. They exist separate from us in that we don't initiate or control them. But something else I said was this: when you reach a certain point, it's no longer frightening because it is just how it is. That you can walk through a supermarket and say, "Ah, that's not human." I know that sounds strange, but when you reach a certain point, what is just is. It's not something that communicates to us our identity. So all of this chasing energy and chasing, spirits to prove or create a sensation or to know, the more stress you put yourself under. It's really unnecessary. Beautiful things happen, but they don't happen because we have to exert energy or manipulate energy or anything like that. They just happen. Likewise with your work, you can create the conditions that lend themselves to extrasensory perception. But then you have to let go and just bear witness to what is. And what is that energy naturally flows. The body has its process, its needs. The mind has its natural process. What I really want you to focus on is the flow of energy. It cannot be blocked. It cannot be destroyed. When things are stuck, it's because you're holding on, or your client is holding on, trying to impose their will or prevent themselves from feeling something uncomfortable, such as the unknown that comes from just surrendering and allowing life to flow as it is. Life is a process. It is flowing under its own divine volition. This is why the work, the spiritual work, is letting go of that identity formed in relationship to metaphysical concepts as practitioners, letting go of these lies about manipulating or cleaning or resolving energy blockages and all of this nonsense. When you bring the holy to the fore of your being, in the stillness of your being, in relationship to your client, all of the chaos and conflict within them will quiet as well. Because in relationship to you, they begin to feel their divine self. And it may only happen in relationship to you for a few moments here and there in an appointment. But even if it only happens just a little bit, just for a few seconds, you've given them a touch point that they can go back to when they do feel stuck. Is I felt so at peace in that moment. Why am I feeling so stressed now? How do I get back to that peace? You see, that's how it begins. And then extrasensory perception can be a way to provide, right? It becomes a teaching tool, a healing tool, not something that you do to say, look what I can do. This is who I am. That helps no one. I want you to think about that. All right. Let's take a break. Um, I love to kind of wander to and fro, so I'm sure I need to clarify things here a little bit. Jot your questions down and let's reconnect after the break.